Hello everyone, welcome back to Ignited Minds. Today I'm going to share a beautiful poem with you, which is written by Robert Frost. The name of the poem is Mending Wall. Now, children, sometimes it happens that we do not have cordial relation with our neighbors. Sometimes we don't like what they say, sometimes we don't like what they construct, sometimes we don't like their intentions about us, sometimes we feel as if they're not able to understand our concern, etc. etc. So this poem written by Robert Frost is actually, it you can say it's a discussion between a neighbor and the poet. Both of them, the narrator and the neighbor. Now, what is the discussion all about? What is happening? What is the discussion? Why is the discussion needed? This we are going to read in the poem. I'll be explaining line by line so that it is crystal clear to you. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen ground swell under it. Now, children, the poet is not liking the wall. Here, the narrator who's narrating the poem, he doesn't want the wall to be established between him and the neighbor. Both of them are neighbors, and there is a wall between them. Now, this wall is bringing trouble into the life of the narrator. So, the narrator says that not only me, but I think there is someone else also who doesn't want this wall to be built, that sends the frozen ground swell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun. Sends the frozen ground here means during the winter time there is ice all over the wall. The ice is accumulated, the ice enters the wall, all the small gaps in the bricks in the walls are filled with ice. And when the spring season comes, that ice melts. And when it melts, what happened? The upper boulders here are the brick. They start to become loosened and then they fall. Now, why do they become loose? Naturally, if there are two boulders and in between that boulders, there is an ice. And if it melts, so there will be a space left, a vacuum left. And who's going to fill that place? No one. So the bricks will become loosened and then they will fall and spills the upper boulder in the sun. This is exactly what I said. The bricks on the top are spilled now. Now they start falling. And makes gap, even two can pass abreast. Now how much is the gap made? The gap is equivalent to a space where even two people can come across, go here and there, they can cross the wall. Now, children, why is the poet telling this? The poet is telling this because the wall is being broken at times. The bricks are falling on his side. And if the bricks are falling on his side, then who's going to repair it? Who's going to collect it? It is the narrator himself. So who likes it? Something which is damaged, something which is broken, something which is old. What do? We try to throw it off. We try to remove it off. So that is why the poet is willing to remove this wall. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair, where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. Now he says not only the nature, but there is someone else also who wants this wall to be broken or who wants the gaps in the wall not to be filled. Now who is it? It is the hunter. The hunters who come in the morning. Now, who are the hunters? The hunters take their yelping dog. Yelping here means shouting. With the help of those dogs, they hunt the animals and birds. Now, if they want to get the work done by the animals, of course, they need to get them some food, right? So, the rabbit in the holes of the wall. Now, why? Because the wall is having small gaps, and the rabbit, they make their house inside. So, every morning when hunter comes, they kill those rabbits and then they have their food. So hunters are getting double benefit. They are going to hunt also, they are helping their dogs also who are shouting on a daily basis. So the poet says, apart from the nature that creates the ice first and then melt it in the spring season, I believe hunters are also wanting the wall to be broken so that their dogs can eat those rabbits. The gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. He says, but let me tell you one thing about the gap. I only fill the gap, but I haven't seen them creating, like, I haven't seen a real time wall breaking into the gaps. It is not possible. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. Now he says, one day I wanted to discuss this thing with the neighbor. So I called him and I said, let us do one thing, because the poet wanted to show the neighbor what is the problem with this wall. The poet wanted to show this neighbor that every time I repair this wall, somebody or the other gets it broken. And then to repair that wall again is a big task. Now, this thing the poet wanted the neighbor to see himself. The poet wanted that you should examine, you should experience it yourself. So, what does he do? He calls the he calls the neighbor and he says, there is a wall between us. Let us keep this wall between us. On the right side, you keep walking, and on the left side, I keep walking. As we keep walking, we will repair the bricks that have fallen. You pick the bricks on your side, and I will pick the bricks on my side. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Now he says to each the boulders. Each the boulders here means on both the sides there are bricks fallen, but on the side of the poet there are more and more bricks which are falling. The wall of the neighbor doesn't remove many bricks, but here in the case of poet, his wall is broken more as compared to the neighbor. Some are loaves. Now loaves here means some, you have seen a slice of bread like that, rectangular masses. So some are rectangular, as some are balls. Some are means oval. Some of the bricks are in rectangular shape, some are in the oval shape. We have to use a spell. Now the poet says that I don't know if these bricks will remain there intact, so I think I have to do a magic spell. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers, rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game. Now he says, stay where. That means the poet insists the bricks to stay. Now, because the poet and his friend, they have worked so much on the wall, they have just repaired the bricks. So now the poet insists, or you can say request the wall to be on the same place and not to fall apart, and wait till they turn their back. That means they go back to their home. One on a side, it comes to little more. There when it is, we do not need the wall. Now here, one on a side means on the poet's side, he has more and more of bricks. And so he doesn't want that wall should be there. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cone under his spine, I tell him. Now he says, I want to ask, what is the reason to build a wall? Because you have all the pine and I have the apple orchard trees. So none of your pine will enter in my apple orchard and none of my apple orchard will go in your ground. So what is the need to build a wall? When we are mature enough, we will not enter each other's garden. He only says good fences make good neighbors. Now what is the reason given by the neighbor? The neighbor believes that only the good fences can good make neighbor. That means if we do not have a good fence or a good wall between the neighbors, then our relationship will spoil, and that is the reason that he wanted the wall to remain intact even if when it is broken. But this point is not convincing to the poet. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors, isn't it? Where there are cows, but here there are no cows. Now he says spring is the mischief in me. Every time in the spring season, as I told you in the starting of the poem, the ice begins to melt, and then the problem is with the narrator. So he says during the spring season, I want to give him some idea. I want to put a notion in his hand, a suggestion in his hand. And what would the suggestion be? It would be, why do you want to keep this wall? Neither of us have even animals. I don't own a cow, you don't own a cow, nobody is going to cross each other's ground. Then why are we making this wall? Why do we keep it? Before I built a wall, I would ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom was I like to give offense. Now he says, at some point of time, my heart says that I should make another wall. If the question is about making a wall only, then why to keep this useless wall? Why shouldn't I make a wall of my own, so that I don't have to use this wall? This wall will completely be dedicated to the narrator, to the neighbor then, and the new wall will be taken care of by the poet. But he says that if I make a new wall, probably it can, offend him, offend his friend. His friend might feel offended. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I would rather he said it for himself. Now, what did he say? Elves to him means being elves to someone means being rude and to the point. Sometimes we want to be really straightforward and say whatever we feel. That is what it means to be elves to somebody. So he says at one point of time, I want to be elves to him. I want to be rude to him and convey him that I am not liking this. I want this wall to be broken. But then he says, I think I should not be rude, because this is going to be a problem for him. He is going to feel bad about it, which I don't want. I see him there bringing a stone, grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only, and the shade of trees. Now he says, before I could say anything, before I could do anything, I again see him next morning with a wall. Again, next day he's standing up, he's having a wall, he's repairing the wall. So he says that it is impossible to guide this man. Why? Because he is surrounded by the darkness. Now this is a very important point. Darkness here does not refer to the darkness of the trees, the darkness of the shade of the trees. The darkness here refers to the superstition that he has in his mind. And what superstition he has in his mind? What his father told him. And what did the father tell him? The father told him to keep good fences between the neighbors. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. So again he says that every time I try to convince him or I try to speak to him, I feel that he is already into the superstition and he forgets, and he really feels proud of what he does. He really feels happy of what he does. So at the end, the poet has to convince himself not to build a wall or not to repair that wall, because the poet has understood that his neighbor is fully into superstition. I hope, children, this poem is clear to you. If you liked the video, if you have understood it well, please go like and subscribe my YouTube channel, and of course share it with your friends. Till then, keep learning, keep sharing.